Hi, everybody. Welcome to my later evening paint session. I thought it would be fun to just get on here and show you how I create some of my mixed media art. And so to start off with, I figured I would show you some of the supplies that I use. Of course, if this is something that you watch back and you decide that you want to create something similar, you don't have to use the exact same things. I've been collecting Daniel Smith watercolors for probably 7 years now. They are very high quality, but definitely on the pricier side. So I'm going to swatch some of these to show you what they look like. And to do that, I'm just going to use a Princeton Heritage number 4. Just grab a little dab here. This one is Rare Green Earth. I really like this particular color because it separates into a nice greeny, deep green. And then I love this next one. This is called Cascade Green. And this one separates into green and blue. So it's kind of like this teal, but as it dries, you'll see that it tends to separate the blue and the green. And it'll have kind of a two-tone sheen to it. Then the next one is Phthalo Turquoise. As you can tell, this one is very much loved. And I'm going to swatch that one for you. Very, very pretty. And then you'll get to see my most loved color that I actually need to reorder, which is Daniel Smith Indigo. And we'll just swatch it here for you. So these are the colors that I'm going to use for this one. I may end up adding something else just to give it a little more of a pop, but this is what I'll start with. But I wanted to show you, do you see how this color is separating green and teal? That's that cascade green. That's really beautiful. So anyway, just thought you might like to see that. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started. I don't necessarily have like something that I start doing like with every single one. But what I'm going to do to start for this one is take my watercolor and just dab if I can. This one is, I think this was the first one I actually ever bought. So it may not want to come out anymore. Let's see if I dip it into some water. Maybe I can get a little bit of it to come out. Not quite. I'll just leave it like that for now. I do have a small blob in my color palette, mixing palette over here. And then what I'll do is take this and kind of do something similar, just in random spots. Same with Rare Green Earth. And lastly, Cascade Green. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is just flip this over. Oops, here we go. And kind of just dab. I usually like to kind of figure out the flow of the painting first. Sometimes it goes top left to lower right. Sometimes it's kind of a wave in the middle. Sometimes it's kind of all over the place. But I think for this one, I'll kind of have some up here, some here, and then maybe the majority there. All right. So then what I'll do is take a spray bottle of water and then just spray and watch how everything kind of just bleeds into the water that I sprayed. And then what I do is I take a brush. I'll use this fluffier one. This is, a Princeton Neptune number 14. And what I like to do is create some sort of visual interest. So my thing lately has been to kind of create these spins or these circly sort of things. And I like to use a dry brush because obviously it's going to get wet as you're going, but I really like getting this sort of look with it. So I'm just going to kind of do a few more of those. There we go. And then just using the same brush, I'm going to clean it, but then leave some extra water on it and then just start kind of dabbing around. And I definitely want to make sure I leave some white space because that is something that creates visual interest. I might just kind of make some marks. And some of this might have a little too much paint on it, and that's okay. You can lift that out. Just kind of put it in your palette off to the side to save it for another time. There we go. Now, because I couldn't really get a whole lot of that indigo on there, I'm going to just go over to my palette, which you can see looks like this. This is the indigo. And I'm going to load my brush up with that and just kind of dab into some of the wet areas to try to get some of that throughout here. There we go. All right. And then one more for good measure. Okay. So normally I like to let this air dry, but nobody's got time for that. So you get to listen to it dry for just a sec because I air dry it with a heat gun. I'm sure you all love listening to the heat gun. Right. Just about done. Maybe I don't mind using a little bit wet. But I do want to call your attention back to that cascade green color again, because you can really see now that it's dry how the separation between the teal and the green happens, and it just looks so beautiful. And then you add the rare green earth to it, and it just accentuates it. All right, so I think that's good enough. Sometimes what I'll do, again, just because visual interest is really important, is I'll take a paper towel and kind of just dab areas that are still wet just to see if we can add some more texture to them. There we go. All right. So this is looking like a really good base so far. And then what I like to do is bring in a stencil. The stencils are really interesting. They add a lot of, again, visual interest. I feel like I keep saying that. So there's a couple ways we can do this. And I was thinking as I was approaching this that I was actually going to use some gold foil on this. So it would make sense that if I'm going to use a stencil to put some acrylic paint, that I should use something that can kind of go with the gold. And what I have in front of me is this golden artist iridescent pearl white. But I was kind of hoping to maybe go for gold. Let me see, I have this one, which is an iridescent bronze, but I also don't really want the gold foil to interrupt what's going on here with the gold paint. So let's see here. Maybe what I will do is use the pearl because it is really more white than it is silver. And so from here, what I'm going to do is, again, just kind of cleaning off my palette knife here. And I'm going to put some of this acrylic paint on there. Let's see if I can squeeze some of it out. This stuff is a bit old as well. There we go. All right. So I'm going to take this, and what I like to do with the stencils is kind of just decide where I'm going to put some of this paint. So I may decide to kind of go right here with some of it. And it's important that you go in relation to the direction that the stencil is flowing, or else you might get up like underneath there, which doesn't look the greatest. So you can see how that looks. And then let's maybe add just a tiny little bit right here. And then I'm actually going to lift this. You can see how that looks. And let's maybe put this here. And I'm okay if it's not perfect to the stencil. Like, I'm not a perfectionist with that because it is mixed media, and the whole point is to come up with something that is not predictable. And I enjoy things that are unpredictable in art, which I think is the opposite of a lot of people, and which is why I had a lot of problems when I first started watercolor painting, gosh, like 12 years ago. Because I wanted to control it so badly, and I just wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. And eventually I learned to kind of just let go. And then I was happy that I let go of it, because you can really create some beautiful things when you just let go of that control. So now what I'm going to do, I feel like this is a little too loud right here compared to the other two areas that we have here and here. So I'm going to grab a comb that I have, as well as this Catalyst brush that I have by Princeton. And I'm going to kind of try to pick up some of that paint, and then take this comb and go over it like that. And I think that's good enough for now. Let's see here. Okay, so that's going to take a few minutes to dry. So while that's drying, what I typically like to do from here is start working with my Sharpie pen. I love the Sharpie pens for just fine tip black ink stuff. The other thing that I like is this Bombay Black India ink, because one of the things that I do in my art is kind of just draw with the tip of this part right here all over, like just a big flower or leaf of some sort, or do some sort of mark making. And I think it just looks really, really nice. So you can do either one. I think I might actually be leaning a little bit more towards the India ink. And I don't know, what do you think about collage? We could add some collage paper to it, maybe. Let me see what I have. Let's see. I have some coffee stained papers, but I don't know that that's really going to go with the aesthetic of this because it's more, oceany. I used a lot of them, so I don't have a whole lot left, but this is what I do have. Yeah, I don't think that that's going to cut it. So we'll just not worry about it for now. So the next thing that I will do is go in with the India ink. And this acrylic's going to take a little while to dry. But in the meantime, I want to decide what the focal point of this is going to be. And I think that what I'm going to do with it is either have something going straight up and down here or potentially a floral. Actually, I'll show you some of, let me see if I have an example of one that I did. This one wasn't using India ink, but I used the same concept with watercolor and did this. So, yeah. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make that decision here. I don't want it to be so overwhelmed with black that the whole thing is just really dark. And just in case, I do have my white India ink. This one is waterproof. Haven't used it in a while, so it needs to be shaken. Oops. And what might actually be interesting here is to take the India ink, apply it first, and then go over that with some white for some dimensionality. So maybe let's start here and go up here. We'll kind of just do this leafy thing. I'll just add some drops around here. Okay. I'm just going to lift some of that out of there. All right. So let me put the cap back on here. Clean up my little ink mess over here because I tried to shake it. The thing was loose. Like a moron. Go me. Okay. So this is going to need to dry a little bit, but I actually am not thinking that I need to add the white. And I feel like just kind of talking through some of my decisions as I go, it kind of helps to show that I don't always have a plan going directly into it. I just kind of go with the flow as things begin to happen. So sometimes I'll have an idea of what I want to do, but then it doesn't really go with what I've put down on the paper. And so it ends up making more sense to kind of pivot and go in a different direction. And that is what I think I'm going to do here as well. I'm just going to wait for this India ink to dry. And while that is drying, I'm going to clean up this mess, and then I will see if I have any questions or comments I can respond to. And word to the wise, if you ever do spill alcohol ink everywhere, one thing you can do to help clean it is use 99% isopropyl alcohol. Of course, you need a clean paper towel, which I don't exactly have. It's okay. Okay, good enough. All right, so let's see what we've got going on here. Okay. Let's see. Looking for comments. Lots of co-host invite requests. Okay. All right. So now that this is working on drying, what I want to do is start planning out where I'm going to put the gold leaf foil. And in order to do that, you have to use adhesive sizing. This is the one that I use. It's by Speedball. It's got some dog hair on it because it's so sticky on the outside. And usually what I do, because it's hard to clean it off a brush, is I just use some sort of wooden stick. This was from a pack I think I bought that was for like apple, like making caramel apples. So I like to use this. And as you can see, this is a well-loved bottle. And usually I like to start on the black, but because this is still drying, I'm going to wait on that. So one thing that I like to do is just get some, and then we'll start maybe just by making some little dots. Now, sometimes it does help to use a brush, so I'm not always against using a brush for this. But when you do apply this, you want to make sure that you do it in an even layer that's not super thick, because if you do it super thick, it will take a long time to dry before you can put the foil on. And then when it does dry, it's kind of just this ball of sticky gumminess that when you put the foil on, if you push it too hard, the foil just kind of goes through and there's more sticky that comes through from it. So just keep that in mind. And like I said, I don't really have a rhyme or reason to this part yet. I usually stick with doing some form of mark making to begin with because I like mark making. So I think that's good there. And then if you wanted something more circular, you can turn it around and use the other end, of course. I'm gonna just rinse that off and then use this end and make some circles, maybe here and some here. That one's too thick. Okay. Now, one thing that you can do to help clean your little stick here is to use isopropyl alcohol to remove the stickiness. And then just store it for using another time. Another method that I like is to use a catalyst to help to get the effect that I'm looking for with some of this. So like this is too thick and I don't want it to be that thick, but I also don't want to gum up one of my brushes. So what I would do in this case is grab one of my catalysts, which what I'm looking for is not here. So instead, let me grab a palette knife, the palette knife that I was using. And what I'll do instead is kind of flick it like this. And that'll give it almost like a brushed type feel to it when you do go to put the foiling on. So then again, we're going to take some more. I'm going to go in here and we'll just kind of, again, do the same thing. Okay. So I'm going to give this a few more minutes to dry so that we can put some of that gold leafing over the black part there. So this still has some wet areas, and I want to make sure that when I use the wooden stick to apply it, I'm not applying it to wet ink. So we're going to give that just another moment to dry. And in the meantime, there may be some other areas I'd like to add it to. It's kind of hard to see at the angle that I have, but let's take a peek. Yeah, I think this is looking good. I might like to add some here, maybe a little bit right here, but I do like this texture in here. So I think that's pretty good for now. I need to get another paper towel apparently. Here we go. Here's one. Get the stickies off my fingers. And sometimes what I'll also do is go in and add some of that sizing to these black dots so that they have that gold accent too. Because I feel like the gold really brings that pop of reflection that we like to see in paintings and such. So let's see. I think I can speed this up a little bit with a heat gun. Don't want to be too close with it because the ink will kind of like get crispy and dry. And that's not what I'm going for. Almost there. Trying to get dots out dry. And I'm gonna get these two areas dry. Oh, I think that's close enough. All right, so again, grabbing the adhesive sizing. And one thing that I'll also point out that I have, I cannot for the life of me remember what these are called. I've had them for years. I usually use them for masking fluid, like this. But I have attempted to use these with this, and while it works, it's really difficult to clean these. So you can use these. I just don't like to, because why bother cleaning something that's really difficult to or using something that's really difficult to clean if you can just use a wooden dowel. So okay, so let's take this, get some on there. And so this is going to be kind of like a broken up line. I don't expect it to be perfect, and it's certainly not going to be exactly like what the black already has on it. Some areas will be thicker, some areas will be thinner. The point is that as you go, you can draw that visual interest in with the gold foil. And you'll know the foil is ready to apply when this turns completely clear, which you may be able to see right here. And this process can take a little bit of time, and that's totally okay. I find it very meditative to just come and paint and create. Not everything's going to turn out, but point is that you're creating, you're learning. Don't know. Whoops. It's a little too much. That's okay. I think that's probably good for that. But while I'm at it, I'm going to add some blobs here. It's a bit too thick. And some of these other ones are still wet, so I'm just gonna leave those alone. And I think I wanna maybe add some circles here. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that for now with the stick application. And what I want to do is to try to capture a bit more of these accentuations in the swirls, like right here. And sometimes the best way to do that is to use a brush. Sometimes the best way to do that is to use like a paint pen or something like that. But because I'm using the adhesive sizing, I'd like to stick with using the adhesive sizing. So this is one of those times where I would then use a brush. And so if you're going to use a brush, I would wet it first and then dip it in there. And because what I want is really more of the brush stroke itself, I want to wipe off as much as I can and then just kind of let the bristles do the rest, knowing that it's not going to be like one thick line. So let's find like this one. Actually, that turned into more of a circle. Oops, that's okay. Could even try to swirl it like that, see what happens, or just not put any foil on that part at all. Let's add a little bit more. And let's maybe, already got dots there. Sometimes it gets a little hard to see. And then I'm going to take this and go that. And then let's just do a couple more little brushstroke type flicks. All right. So I'm going to immediately put that in water. I know it's a no-no, but I'm going to pour isopropyl alcohol on that. I don't know that it's a no-no. I guess I always just assumed it was, but people use these for alcohol ink paintings all the time. So what do I know? Okay, so that is good for now. And now I'm just gonna get the stickies off my hands, cap this back up because it gets real boogery real fast. And now I'm going to wait for some of this to dry so that we can apply the gold foil to it. And again, to speed up that process, I'm going to use my heat gun. And I don't like how thick that is. I'm just going to use my finger a little bit. And same with this one. So you can see as it dries, it gets real buggery, which it's supposed to do. So you have to work with it relatively quickly. Okay. So this is going to take a little longer to dry. And so I want to not spend all night having you watch me dry paper. So I'm going to show you how I begin to add gold foil to the ones that are already dry. So I like to keep my loose foil in here. Usually they come in sheets, and I'm going to turn off my fan in here so that they don't blow all over the place, because they will. They usually come in big sheets, but for things like this, I try to just use the pieces that I already have. So for example, I'm going to put this piece here. And I can feel a little bit more over there, so I'm going to add that. And then let's take this, and this is where all those circles are, so, or dots rather. And let me just kind of get this stickiness off my fingers, or else it's going to stick to my fingers. Okay. So then this, I'll lay right here because there's a big swatch right there. And then I'll put this here. Here we go. All right. Now, some of this is still wet here, so I'm going to leave that. We'll add this part here. And then this part can go here. Not sure how much is actually over there. There we go. Add this over here. Looks like we have a little bit still here that hasn't been covered. There we go. There's that, and that, and this right here. We've got some over here. So I'll lay this like this, so I keep it out of that wet spot. I know there's a sticky spot I can feel right there, but okay, I think I got it. And then for that one, let's get a fresh piece. Here we go. So I'm just going to kind of lift up my paper and look to see where I have other areas that are clear, because sometimes it's hard to tell. This looks like a relatively large area right there. We have a little bit more over here somewhere. No, I just saw it. There it is. Let's see, that might have just been the only one. Let's see. A little bit right there. Got a little sticky guy right there. Okay. So, oh, I missed one. Here's one right here. Okay. I think that's all of the ones that were already dry, with the exception of this, because I'm not sure I want to cover that one completely. So we'll see. Okay, so the rest of this needs to dry before we can do the whole brush off thing. So let me see if I can get this to dry. You can tell when it's getting too hot, it starts to bubble like the ink did. I don't know if you can see that right there. That is not what you want. So just keep moving the heat gun around, or walk away and come back when it's done. But for the purpose of this video, look at it, done faster for you. So these guys are just not wanting to die. All right. So let's see what we can do in the meantime. Add these here. Might even use my finger to try to get some of this wetter stuff pulled off. That way we can move this along faster. I would not recommend doing this because it is like a latex, and you want to keep the areas that you've put on here looking nice. So that's why I don't recommend it, because sometimes you can put a bubble in the middle and then, it doesn't have any stick for the foil anymore. So Just something to think about. Okay, so I'm just going to start putting some of these smaller pieces down. There we go. I'll clean up my sticky fingers a little bit. And I'm getting low on some of these pieces, so I may transition over to my sheets here. So in case you're curious, this is what they look like. They come separated like that. I'm going to just lay this here. I'm going to lay this one here. Okay, missed a spot there. And I just like to kind of lay my finger or my hand over the whole thing. So if I feel any sticky areas, I know where to put down more foil in case I've missed anything, or in case there's like a sticky spot where I applied a little too much and, you know, now it needs to be reduced in order to have it stop being sticky. Okay. Are you ready for the magic now? You've waited long enough, yes? So let me get the stickies off my fingers. And I'm going to put this like this. And I have a makeup brush that I cut a long time ago for this very purpose. And what I do is just very gently start to make little circles to remove the foil that doesn't adhere to the painting. And I usually do kind of a light first pass. It's not going to be totally perfect until we do kind of a second pass on it to really get like the grooves lifted, if that makes any sense at all. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. So, for example, there are sometimes areas where there's like a bridge between where the sticky part is and where another sticky part is. And that first pass doesn't rip the foil where it needs to be ripped in order to show that gap, almost like that, for example. So I like to then go back and do circles at almost an angle like this to really break up the parts that don't need to be there. This is a good example because the centers of these need to be broken. Like you see that. Okay. Or like the channels here, you can see some of them are not breaking. These are usually the areas that are the hardest because you can't always get them to tear where they're supposed to tear. Okay. See, this is a good example of one that was not quite dry. And we're brushing it and now it's goopy. So it's kind of, you know, it tears the gold that was there. So we have to go back and put more over it. Okay. So a couple of things, I can tell this is still sticky there. So that might have been either a spot that was too thick with adhesive sizing or wasn't totally dry yet. So I'm just going to go back over some of these stickier spots. Some of it's hard to tell because my fingers are sticky. This I was really hoping to have look more like a brush stroke, so I was hoping it would lift a bit better. There we go. Okay. There's a sticky spot there. These are still a little bit sticky, so. Another thing you can do, which I don't have any right now, but something you can do if you do like to work with adhesive sizing is use like these little bottles that have almost like a needle point end to it, so it comes out very fine. And that's a good way to apply it as well. But I like the unpredictability and the variation in lines by using the wooden stick that I use. Okay. So I'm going to move this off to the side for now and try to clean up the stick on my fingers a little bit better. And so from here, this is where I would be adding some extras. So this would be where I would try to make sure that I kind of have a lot of balance where I want it to be. Let me see. I still feel a little sticky. And so from here, what I might do is take my pen and make a few little adjustments. Like, for example, I might start making some really fine dots really close together and then kind of spread them out further as it gets further away. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll hold my pen like this and I'll make like double circles, just kind of scratchy circles around things. And really, it's just about playing. It doesn't always turn out looking fantastic, but sometimes it's just about figuring it out as you go. All right, this live has been very long, so I hope that you all enjoyed this, and I will see you in another one soon.